Hi there and welcome to the final edition of our first season of Black and Azul, coming to you in the studio. We've got our entire team here and we are very excited and happy to be here with you for our 35th and final episode. Alex Morgan, Jamon Moore, I am Charles Wollin, and he is Joel Soria. And we'll start with the biggest news of the week so far, and it's Chris Wondolowski. He is back with the team for a one-year deal, guys. Joel.
Yeah, monumental. I think this is one of the best way, I guess, for Chris to end a stellar, legendary journey in MLS as a professional. 36 years of age. Signs his final contract with the Quakes, a one-year deal that will see him ride into the sunset. Now, the interesting part of it, though, is that he took a significant cut from his salary. Per reports, he did not sign a DP deal, nor did he sign a TAM deal, meaning he's probably around that threshold, that TAM threshold, maybe $350K, $400,000. But I think it's the right way. I call for the San Jose Earthquakes to build him a statue. I mean, that's all they need. That's the cherry on top.
Seriously, it's about time. And look, it's not just sentimental. This was one of Chris Wondolowski's statistically most productive seasons as a San Jose Earthquake. Another 15-goal year for Chris Wondolowski. So he still has a lot to offer this team going forward next year.
And when pressed, the answer was just one more year. So right now it seems like a definitive answer. There's not going to be another swan song. It's going to be, this is the season. And if you want to see Chris Wondolowski perform for the San Jose Earthquakes, you've got one last chance to come to Avaya Stadium for a season and to watch the magic happen.
And I put it back to you, Jamon, since you've kind of followed his career so closely, like the rest of us, but also you have some youth soccer background here, and we've chatted about it before on our second to last show. In terms of Wando potentially being a coach, and he also mentioned he'd like to stay involved with the club, and let's talk about that as well here. And I've mentioned it before. I think that Chris Wondolowski would be a phenomenal coach one day. He just kind of has that mentality. He loves the club so much. It's so fitting for him to have this one-year deal and then potentially transition to the academy and to work with the rest of the coaching staff there.
He's got too much passion, too much energy to just go home and call it a career and sit there. It's just not something that would suit him. He's going to need to get out and put that energy into something else, and putting it into youth soccer and putting that energy behind the next generation is a fantastic way for a lot of players who have the type of career that he has to really kind of scratch that itch and to still be able to be competitive. But now you're putting that energy into somebody else, and it's a completely different type of rewarding. And as a father, I'm sure he's beginning to understand, as he sees his kids grow and take the steps in their life, how important it is to be able to inspire and push others to their best, and being able to do that with the youth soccer club and the Quakes Academy, I think is a perfect way for Chris Wondolowski to stay engaged. That and singing with the Ultras on the weekends.
And to add, youth soccer coaching is not something that's new to him either. When he was making, minimum wage salary, like $12,000 a year in his rookie seasons in San Jose and Houston, he's talked about how he had to supplement that work with coaching youth soccer. So it's already something he's prepared for.
Look, I'm all in favor, as I said it before just earlier, that this is the quintessential per se way to go out for Chris. But another voice within me also tells me that there's something about Chris, and that something is that he wants to continue playing. Not only this upcoming season, but probably beyond. And we were talking about this, guys, before we went live. The Quakes just do not have that player currently that is going to replace a 36-year-old icon. Now, let that sink in for a moment. He's 36 years of age, born in 1983, and he still happens to be the Quakes' most productive player, and also happens to be their captain and their biggest pillar. Now, why? If Chris goes out next year and he scores 15 goals, is he going to be that complacent? Is he going to say, well, I signed up for this last year. I'm still productive. Am I really going to go out this way, or do I want to continue going? I think Chris, like many legends in the sports world, they have that passion, that tenacity, that competitive nature that is unparalleled, right? They want to keep going. They want to keep going. A part of me, really, just truthfully, thinks that Wando is just made to keep playing this game until his legs fall off. Like Cristiano Ronaldo, for instance, just a couple days ago said, age is just a number. Zlatan says the same. I think, obviously, Wando is not at their level, but within MLS, he is that reference point. And I think that age really just doesn't belong with, the name Chris Wondolowski. So I'm also of that belief. I think Chris should, in theory, keep going and keep playing. Sadly, his season's his career is gonna come to an end in 2020.
Yeah, I mean, and there's other options, for him. I mean, we've seen it with players like Jordan Stewart and Didier Drogba when they no longer felt that MLS was a place where they could compete. They found another home in USL, or they found other ways to be able to engage. We don't see it in MLS like we've seen it in other American sports, but you remember, Brett Favre would go away and then he'd come back at the very end, of a season, and we saw that. We've seen this with other sports. We haven't quite seen it in soccer yet, but I can imagine Chris Wondolowski on the bench as a player coach. He's not going to necessarily play in every game, but maybe at the second half of the season when the team needs a bit of life and it needs a bit of spring, you could throw someone like that into a game for 10, 15 minutes and make a difference.
But what impacts would that have on his legacy as it pertains to the San Jose Earthquakes?
Well, I mean, there were comments back in those days that it was going to damage the legacy of the players who were doing it, and frankly, it didn't happen. People still talk about them as legends in their sport. He owns that MLS goal-scoring record, and I think, Joel, on this show, you indicated how difficult it's going to be for anyone to stay consistent long enough and be in the league long enough and with that kind of production in this day and age in a selling league for that record to be broken. So his legacy is going to live forever because that record is unlikely to be broken for an extremely long time.
And I don't think that he has even the chance to I don't think he would entertain another offer to go to another MLS team, even if given the chance, even if he was going to go to New York or LA or Vancouver or Portland or Seattle, because he's so he's so loyal to the club, and he probably had chances to go to other clubs and
he said he's had chances to go to other clubs
and potentially play in Europe. But does that mean another local team for him? Does that maybe mean Sacramento MLS for him? Maybe, because I don't see him leaving the Bay Area because he has his family. He's established here. And I hear you. Maybe he does sign up for another season. He's like, oh yeah, this is my last season. But yeah, maybe if they go to a semifinal or a final, next year, and he doesn't feel okay. Yeah, maybe one more year. I don't think that he can. I think he would change his position and say, I'm going to go for another season.
Guys,
and Jamon's correct. Jamon's correct in the sense that he can still be available and come off the bench and still play. I mean, look at what Patrick Marleau did for the Sharks, and we're sitting here in the same studio that the Fin Factor shoots in, and Patrick Marleau is now doing that for the Sharks. So I think that those options are available. He has multiple options, and there's all the other Bay Area clubs, if not Sacramento, and he doesn't have to go too far.
You're the Oakland Roots now, and you've got all kinds of other options to be able to scratch that itch.
Right, but it doesn't have to be that way. And that's the point that I'm trying to stress. It doesn't have to be that way. He's scored double digits for 10 years, a decade. What makes us think that he's going to come out in 2020 and fall flat?
I don't.
Nothing.
I don't. Yeah.
No,
Nothing.
I just when I thought that this was going to be the year, the way that it started, he proved everyone wrong and
15.
had his second most productive season.
15 goals.
Yeah.
No one on the team came close to that. So is he willing? Is he going to be willing, if he does have a positive season, is he willing to walk out on a high note? The Chris Wondolowski that I know wouldn't be willing to do that.
He keeps going till the bitter end. Yeah, I agree. And look, he said at his postseason press conference, this is the strongest, the fittest, and the fastest he's ever been. Right? So he's feeling good. So I can very well imagine him having another, 10 plus 15 goal season next year, and us sitting here at the end of the 2020 season having a very similar conversation.
Let's move on. Let's talk about Chris Wondolowski's comments on the CBA deal and on charter flights. And Joel, you had an excellent piece about this, and you can kind of provide some more context about it. But charter flights and the CBA is coming up, and the charter flights has been an issue throughout MLS this season. Wayne Rooney making comments about it, Zlatan Ibrahimovic making comments about it. A lot of players that are not used to playing or flying commercial flights have had a lot of thoughts about that and what that kind of translates and bodes for the league. And so Wando had his say.
Yeah, Wando's no exception to any of these talking points. I mean, he's for the player, by the player. He wants the best for himself and for his colleagues. Long story short, that's what he transmitted to me in this exclusive one-on-one that I had with him. Regarding the charter flights, though, he did mention in there that he wished that the San Jose Earthquakes, picked up some of their charter flights that are made available to every team in MLS. Sadly, Fisher and Co. decided not to, which leads to the discussion about, is that possibly a reason why that the San Jose Earthquakes have, failed catastrophically on the road? That was definitely one of the things that held them back this season, was the poor performance, the lackluster performances on the road, specifically late in the season. I'm of the belief that the lack of charter flights does affect the players psychologically. To a certain extent, it calls for a player to sit in a terminal, right, with the general public. Not that these players are global superstars, but they do need some space, to foster that ambience that they'll need to carry on to the field. Second, I think that it's huge for a player, to feel like they're wanted and to feel like they're well appreciated, for being a professional athlete. Every professional athlete in America, for the most part, gets royalty treatment. MLS players don't. And I think that, we've been dancing around the issue. We've been trying to point at a single thing. And I think that it's a plethora of factors, and Jamon, you agree with me. There's nothing specifically that says this is the reason why MLS teams suffer on the road, but I do feel confident in saying that the lack of charter flights affects the players cognitively, which translates, to poor results on the field away from their home stadium.
Yeah, there's sort of two aspects. One, you can imagine that charter flights are physically hinder the players. But then again, to a man, the San Jose Earthquakes this season denied that fitness and physical tiredness had anything to do with their losing streak. They were saying that their fitness trackers, and their speedometers were saying that they were putting in as much effort at the end of the year as they were in mid-July. It didn't tail off. But then again, you see someone like Christian Espinoza saying at the end of the year, this is the most tired I've ever felt in my career. And to me, that signals that it's more of a mental fatigue. And that's the other aspect of traveling charter, right? It's that,
It alleviates.
It alleviates the mental fatigue. So you imagine going on the road, flying commercially has to, add to that stress. And that could have been one of the factors that, led to the San Jose Earthquakes, or certainly, expounded San Jose's woes this season.
I was mentioning off the air that We've done some analysis on this at American Soccer Analysis before, and I'll just share it quickly with you. We haven't published any articles because there's really nothing to say. Despite regardless of the distances, regardless of the amount of time spent in travel, it actually materially does not affect results on the road. What is true is that we are seeing a decrease in home field advantage in Europe, and we are seeing basically an increase in home field advantage in the United States when it comes to MLS compared to the European countries. And so it is a factor, and Matias did mention this in his end of season press conference, where he said he's as baffled as anybody, having experienced this for a year, why the results were not as good on the road as they were at home, and that he resolved that he wanted to get to the bottom of that particular question next season.
Yeah, I think charter flights and this whole debate for MLS is the league maturing. And I certainly agree with you, Joel, in the sense that these are professional athletes and they should have these royalties afforded to them like every other professional sports league in our country. And just hearing kind of the Wayne Rooneys and Zlatans and Wandos talking about it and starting to go that way, I would assume that in the next 2 to 3 years, they will have charter flights, or the league will demand owners and ownerships to have charter flights because everybody is talking about it, in that realm. And you talk about the mental state, Alex, and mental fatigue. Players have to settle in. You're right. You're sitting in a terminal. You got the public around you. You got to settle in. You got to focus. You have a job to do. You're paid to play football. You're paid to play soccer. You're paid to play the game, and so distractions and not being able to focus and settle in appropriately are certainly a factor. And I think the league, I have my issues with the league, and I have a lot of them, but this one I think isn't going to happen overnight. I think it's a 2 to 3 year process, but I think we're getting there. We're almost there. But this is a good topic to bring up. In the sense that, focus matters when it comes to sports and having that competitive advantage against the next team. And I do feel that commercial flights for these players does not give them a competitive advantage and makes the league look like a Mickey Mouse club and a kind of a domestic league that really needs to continue to professionalize as it does over the years as we get into bringing in Sacramento and Miami and these other teams like Austin into the league.
And it's something that surely is going to be part of the CBA negotiations between the players and the league this offseason. So I assume the players will try to negotiate some sort of fix to the problem, or at least start to implement more charter flights into MLS for this next season.
Yeah, with some minimums. I think the factor here is that there were 3 flights available to each team, and the Quakes chose not to use it. And Wando had indicated there were definitely a couple situations where the team felt that if they had been able to use a charter flight, it really would have been helpful for them. Because you can lose an entire day, as everybody who's traveled much knows, entire day in the airport, over luggage, over check-ins, transportation, everything around it. And with the charter flights, a lot of that pain goes away. Now you're just arriving and you're getting to the plane and you're taking off and you're landing and you're immediately hitting your transportation. The bags are there on the flight and everything is handled for you by the equipment crew. Definitely has big advantages.
Yeah, especially when you're doing 3-4 cross-country flights a year, talking about playing at NYCFC, playing at Toronto, playing at DC United. I mean, 3 cross-country flights over a span of 6-8 months, and that can definitely be a huge factor.
We'll see where league officials stand on charter flights in January at the CBA negotiations.
Let's discuss Florian Jungwirth and Christian Espinoza. Florian Jungwirth, at the beginning of the season, actually wasn't really in the San Jose Earthquakes side, and he's a fan favorite. He's a player that is adaptable and can play as a holding mid, can play outside back, can play at center back. Ended up becoming the first choice center back for Matias Almeyda, with Harold Cummings and Guram Kasia rotating in the other spot. And really kind of setting the tone back there, and really is the kind of guy that wears the club patch on his sleeve at all times. He's one of those kind of guys. But his contract may be almost done here, and maybe the Quakes are going to be re-signing him.
I think so. I think from what Florian was speaking to us about, it sounds like his deal is almost done, sealed, and delivered. I think it's probably a couple of wrinkles that they need to iron out. Aside from that, it truly sounded like Youngworth is going to be back for a couple of more seasons with the Black and Blue, and I think that the Quakes desperately need him. Florian has been a really consistent defender for this team. As you said, he wears the club patch on his sleeve. He wears his emotions on his sleeve. He's a leader. He's a natural captain. If Wando were to step out following the 2020 season, or when he does step out after the 2020 season, I think Florian would be a contender to assume that role. Yep. He's been stellar on that end. Defensively, the first 4 games he wasn't on the roster. He wasn't on the bench. Sorry, he wasn't on the field. But as the weeks went on, he showed that he was their most reliable defender. Hence why he won Defender of the Year.
And at the end of season press conference, Joel, you asked the question. I thought he was very clear here, and we have a quote from Florian that we'd like to be able to show you guys. It says, "My contract is expiring, but I'm pretty sure there will be an announcement soon. I don't want to say more about it, but I'm sure you will see the same Flo Youngworth in 2019 in 2020. Maybe a bit more emotional, a bigger chest. I hear we have a hard off-season plan."
Wow.
So it sounds like he's returning, based on those comments, and it's good for the Quakes. Look, this was a breakout season for him. In past seasons, he didn't really have a spot on the team. He didn't really fit anywhere. He didn't really earn the spot in the defensive midfield, and he didn't really want to play at center back. Certainly last season, there was a tension there of him not wanting to make that move.
Well, conceding
back into
72 goals is going to make you feel that naturally.
And that as well. Look, and we've heard no such complaints this season. It seems that issue has been totally alleviated. Matias Almeyda has made him excited to play for this team. He didn't play for the first 4 games, I think, and then he steps on the field. They get their first win of the year against Portland, and he didn't look back.
Yeah,
if they felt that he was an option at defensive midfielder, then they wouldn't have prioritized a signing like Judson, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it was a clear message when the team went out and got more options at that defensive midfielder position that that was not going to be where he was going to play. But he never did once complain, and I did ask him about it earlier in the season. He never did say anything at all negative in terms of the role that he had been asked to play. He seemed extremely happy to be playing center back. And he indicated that sometimes when you get to a point in your career, the age that he's getting to, that sometimes you have to be able to find your spot, and you have to be able to find that new position and kind of settle in to a more permanent role in which to close out your career with. And that it looks like center back is going to be, where he feels he's going to be for his career going forward.
Look, I think he is perfect for the Almeyda system in the sense that he's able to dribble out of the back. He's pacey, and he's not your typical center back. He's kind of a smaller center back, and in modern football, defenders are asked to now play out of the back, dribble out of the back, beat the first line of the press from a front 2 or a front 3, and he's a perfect kind of player that does that. Given his defensive midfield capabilities too from the past, that's why he slotted in so well, playing in that position. And again, fan favorite. The fans love him. I think that they would be really upset seeing him leave. So again, good signing for the Quakes at a good price, and also can play multiple roles, and is a potential new leader for this team, a new captain when Wando does go off into the sunset. Now let's chat about Cristian Espinosa. He said he would like to stay with the Earthquakes, and just a background on him: he's been on loan from Villarreal to various different clubs across the world since 2016. He actually hasn't really played very much for Villarreal, so I'm assuming Villarreal may want to hold out to either get a deal for him, or he's ready to go potentially for a spot within their squad. Villarreal, a club that has a lot of good South American players and young Spanish players in their ranks over the years, and a team that usually qualifies for the Europa League every year, and certainly kind of in that top 6, top 8 category for the Spanish league. So just to give you some backstory about him and his situation, but he's 24. And so the club may be looking and saying, hey, this guy had a great season. Let's keep him in our ranks. Let's see if we can give him a good preseason. Let's keep him. But he's been loaned out so many times, and they may say, hey, he's a good player. We might want to, raise his profile, raise his stock, or they want to get a good price for him. But the player wants to stay. So where are we with this?
Well, I think we are in negotiations at the moment. I think that's where it stands. I know the Quakes are making a huge push, but they're expecting a lot from Villarreal as well, and they've had that before. They've gotten they've struck some good deals before in the past with other clubs, because the clubs have been committed to working something out. I don't know where Villarreal currently stands with Cristian Espinosa. Obviously, he had a positive season. Obviously, that's going to garner some attention internally in Spain. There's got to be some teams who are interested in taking this 24-year-old. But the good thing is that Espinosa himself wants to stay in San Jose, and that in and of itself can move mountains at times. When a player has a clear desire to stay somewhere, he can use that to leverage his agent, and Espinosa himself can leverage that to their advantage. They can try and persuade Villarreal to let him go, although I do believe that Villarreal is probably going to ask for a pretty hefty transfer fee, at least over $1 million.
Yeah, he said, hopefully I can stay. That was the quote he told us at his postseason press conference. He was already talking about objectives and goals and expectations for the San Jose Earthquakes next season. So it seems like he's in that frame of mind where he wants to stay. And look, just the fact that he had a postseason press conference might signal that the Quakes are in a position where they feel comfortable with his situation, enough so to make him available to the media. We talked to 6 players, 6 of the core players, and we didn't speak to Judson and Salinas and players who were out of contract and maybe their situation isn't as concrete, but the Quakes were definitely confident enough to make Espinosa available to us.
I think if the Quakes are able to retain him, it would be a big boost for their chances in 2020. Although I'm really interested as to what the possible contract could look like. Not entirely sure if it's going to be a flat-out purchase or if it's going to be an additional loan, maybe a year loan with several different loopholes like his initial contract had. Because keep in mind, as far as I'm concerned, the rule in MLS is that if you do sign a player via loan, there is a option to purchase already attached to that. Espinosa's contract did not have that, meaning that it was some sort of weird exception that they made for him. That really tells me that there's a possibility of him staying, but that there's going to be a lot of detail in a possible new contract.
Look, I think the Quakes are in a better position now than they were when I was last on the show 3 weeks ago. Even though they're not in the playoffs, now Matias Almeyda is staying, and because Matias Almeyda is staying, that's giving the players confidence for next year, and that's probably the only reason that Espinosa wants to stay with the Quakes so much, is because Matias Almeyda is here. So now that Matias Almeyda is confirmed to be in San Jose next season, everything else is sort of falling back into place.
And I mean, you don't think that Matias is going to push for Espinosa internally as well? Of
Oh,
course he is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Of course he is.
Yeah.
So he's also a huge factor and extremely influential in this situation.
It may have even been his first demand when talking about, hey, let me
It could
stay
have
with
been.
the club, because he had a chat, of course, with Jesse Fiorinelli and the ownership, when they're going through this whole thing. And it may have been his first thing, saying, you know what, Espinosa, sign it up.
Yeah,
That's what I want,
I mean,
yeah.
the club's looking to save money in other areas, right? I mean, Anibal Godoy was sent to Nashville for $650K in GAM money. You've got Wando.
And you shed his contract too.
Right, and you've got Wando taking a smaller deal. So these different things are starting to fall into place. You also have people like Shea Salinas on a high-value contract that he signed when he was more in his prime, and not expecting him to get that same deal this time if he stays with the team. So I believe that the Quakes are in a fairly good position in terms of contracts, that if they're going to make a splash, it may be that Espinosa is the only splash. And I think that might be the thing that Quakes fans may need to be okay with.
Prepare.
If you want,
Prepare
if you want
yourselves.
to keep Espinosa, and it's
Yeah.
going to come to the tune of something like $2 to $5 million, be prepared. You're not going to get anything else. So that DP, he's going to be able to get that DP tag, and that's going to be what the Quakes are going to do at least until the summer transfer window.
I think they'll be satisfied with it.
Yeah.
We'll see. Yeah, I mean, I think that the fans want Espinosa back enough. I mean, the bird in the hand is worth two in the bush, right? So, you know what you're getting with Espinosa. I believe his upside on goals, as I've said on this show before, is much higher than he's shown this season. I mean, he hit the post a number of times. He was very dangerous in other situations where keepers had to make fantastic saves. We've got some data on American Soccer Analysis that's called X-Place that shows that he put shots in good locations. They just didn't happen to go in the goal.
I guess the only downside is from a marketing perspective, there's no real bonus there. But, the Quakes aren't that type of team. And, specifically now at this stage of the team's history, they're looking for results. And I think that if Espinosa does stay, I think their chances look much better than without him being around.
Yeah, I think everybody could agree here that, Espinosa is a first choice player to sign up to continue playing with the Earthquakes. And for those of you fans, if you disagree, I'd like to know who you are, because I think I don't know one person that wouldn't want Christian Espinosa to stay with the Earthquakes, which now brings us to a point in the show where we are going to each go down the line here and kind of give a season in review, and then we're going to take your questions. So keep your questions coming, keep your comments coming. Remember, this is your show. Javier Leon, good question. Seven Gun, good question. Daniel Negrete, one of our producers, is tuning in. Brian Aboag, Frank, and Alicio Sandoval, you're tuning in as well. Appreciate you guys for tuning in. We'll take some questions in just a little bit. We're going to go down the line, give our season in review. This is just kind of, everyone's going to just talk to the camera or hang out and just have a go at what they thought about the season, the show, everything, whatever they want to say, really. But we're going to start at the end here with Alex Morgan.
Yeah, this was my 5th season covering the San Jose Earthquakes, and I think it's safe to say it was the craziest. There were just so many extremes. It was a year of extremes, such devastating lows, and then incredible, unexpected high points. The summer felt like a fever dream, is the best way I can describe it. The Quakes were really, really, really good from April through July. They went toe-to-toe with every team they faced, home and away. It was like a perfect storm of all these different factors. You were saying their expected goals went through the roof, and they took all their chances. Their defense was good. Everything worked. And then they were awful. They couldn't win a game. As suddenly as everything clicked in April, it fell back apart. It fell apart again, and the flip switched back off. And I don't think they've been able to put their finger on what made them so good and then what didn't work in the run-in. It just sort of happened to them. They haven't been able to rationalize it yet. So that's the challenge for Matias Almeyda next season, is to, over the offseason, be able to figure out what went well and how to replicate that.
Well, and I've taken my shot at some analysis for this. I put together a few charts. I mean, that's kind of what I do. I'm the analysis guy. This is my first year getting to be in the press box, being able to talk with the other writers and reporters who are in the press box, and I want to say it was a fantastic year that I really enjoyed the camaraderie and everything around that. And these conversations kind of evolved as the season went, and there's a number of themes that we would continuously talk about and say, okay, this is what we're seeing in the team right now, and then as the game progresses, we can bring up some of these things. So I'd like to just walk through a few of these charts because I think they kind of show the season in a nutshell, and they also kind of show some tweaks that may need to be addressed for next season. The Quakes are going to be able to be more successful. So if we can bring up that first one here. This is a chart of the number of shots per game that the Quakes had. And you can see the trend line there. You can see how it went up, and when they were playing well, when they were winning, that trend line was going up. But then as soon as they started to falter, you can see that trend line, even though there's the 2 home games and the 1 game against Vancouver where it went really long. It's a really long line because that was when they broke the record. You can see what happens here is that the trend line is going down. Those shots, and we kept saying it on this show, those shots were not happening. And the next chart also shows the shot differential as well, I believe. And the shot differential, you can see how much of a dip that took as well. So that was a big factor. The next chart I wanted to share with you was the spread of the goals throughout the season. And, of course, the big dot on there is Chris Wondolowski, his 4
Chicago
goals.
Fire.
I mean, without a doubt, a highlight of the year, and I happen to be out of town. So my bad fortune. But what a breakout for him. I mean, just to really get those goals, and then he had those 4 straight games where no one else was scoring goals except Chris Wondolowski. And that's what was, I thought, really interesting about this team is that there were different people that stepped up in different parts of the year. In the first month of the season, it was Christian Espinoza showing his quality. And then it was Shea Salinas, and he went on the road and did it with 2 goals in Seattle to earn the Quakes a draw. And then and then it was Wando, and then it was Vako, right?
Yeah.
And then Magnus came in at some key points. But take a look at what's happening at the end of that year, right? Mm-hmm. Over the last 10 games or so, it was the Wando show with a sprinkling here or there, but you really didn't have everyone else involved. It's like the team ran out of ideas. And I really felt that one of the reasons that happened was not because the players were so much tired, because, as you mentioned, Alex, to a man, they told us that, hey, our stats said that we were not tired. We don't feel tired. And yes, Christian Espinoza said that as soon as I had 4 days off, I realized how tired I was. But until then, I didn't feel tired. And they all told us that. But you guys also mentioned something else when you were talking about the charter flights, which was the mental fatigue. And I really feel like because of the lack of squad rotation, the kind of mental fatigue of going out there with the same squad game after game and not really having anything different happen. It's, the definition of insanity, right? Because you didn't change anything and somehow you're expecting a different result. And we kept running out the same lineup game after game and didn't get a different result. And I thought that, that was really what the problem was. And next season, as we've said before, we really would like to see more of that squad rotation.
One word, anticlimactic. That's the way that I look at this season. I also do believe that to a certain extent it was disappointing. When a majority of the teams make playoffs, some of those being the RSLs of the world who lost tonight, the Portland Timbers who exited not too long ago, and their situations, specifically RSL's internal situation, it kind of hurts the brain to try and process that. The fact that the Quakes came so far, but at the end walked away with nothing. This game's about results. This game's about goals. And that's one of the reasons why I brought up Chris and his future, is because at the end of the day, not only is he a legend, but at the same time, he's a player that scores goals and wins you games. The Quakes, on the other hand, had a lot of different subplots. There were a lot of subplots revolving around these Quakes this season. As you mentioned, Alex, it was a very adventurous year. It was one that, as you said, had extreme highs like Wando's hat-trick +1 against Chicago, to extreme lows where we had to wait an hour to speak with Matias Almeyda. Or,
if at all.
If at all, exactly. So my point is that ultimately, in my opinion, in my eyes, the Quakes failed. There's no reason that you bring in Matias Almeyda from Chivas and you don't make playoffs. It just, I don't know in what world that's seen as a positive. Yes, in 2018, the team suffered tremendously. They did. There's no excuse about that. It's written in the record books. But you can't come out of that and tease the fans in that way, in the way that they did. You lost 8 of your last 10. That is unexcusable. It doesn't matter what league you're in. And if you have one of the best coaches, not only in this country, but in South America and North America, in both continents, I don't know. It was hard for me to process it. Yes, a part of me wants to say, give them the benefit of the doubt. The Quakes bounced back. They were points away from making playoffs. But a part of me, and I think the more sensible part of me, says, you know what? There are no excuses. This team failed, and they're going to have to really, really load up that arsenal if they want to make an impact next season.
One of the biggest things that I took away from this season, and I grew up a Quakes fan and used to listen to John Schrader on the radio and pull up my old Windows media player on my computer, and then I eventually worked for the team from 2008 to 2011, and coming back here and doing this show has been a great honor. I'll get to that later, but Matias Almeyda instilling this philosophy, the Bushido Code, giving players confidence, eking out every last piece of energy that he could from this team, giving them a system, giving them something that they could look forward to, and having the players buy into that was really remarkable to see. And obviously the first 5 games of this season was a disaster. And I thought, okay, yeah, it's going to be the same thing as in previous years. Good old Earthquakes, just going to go through games and just kind of do their thing. But this is someone that's re-energized the fan base, re-energized the players. But at the end, as well, through the summer and through all of these fantastic victories and this unbeaten run, it's bittersweet because this team should have made the playoffs. They were right there, and it took quite the kind of weird, catastrophic ending for them to not make the playoffs. And like you had said, Joel. I was certainly with them and thinking, okay, yeah, they're going to the playoffs, and we may even get the chance to do this show, on the road at a playoff venue and cover this team, and the show in itself is this show is really a revolutionary thing for the league, and I'll get to that when we wrap up. But at the same time, analyzing this season, it's been about Matias, it's been about him, it's been about this squad, it's been about a bunch of players that were, left for, maybe finishing last again or second to last again, and not being given the chance, and then kind of surprising some folks. But the ending was very, very bitter and tough, because you cover this team and you think, wow, they've got something here. They're really on it, and then all of a sudden it's just boom, right back down to it. And it begs the question, are they going to come out swinging next year, or are they going to go out and come out in a way that they did in the beginning of this year? And so it really depends, and it depends on how they use this transfer window, and if they can figure out a way to get Cristian Espinoza and maybe signed up, and maybe some other players, as well, into this team as reinforcements to what Matias Almeyda is building. Because I'll tell you, Matias Almeyda, if he doesn't make the playoffs next season or isn't looking like making the playoffs, he's gone, or he's gone to the Argentine national team, or he's gone to the Mexican national team. So, next season will be, I think, in my eyes, better once they strengthen, and certainly a playoff place. But is a playoff place really mean something now? Like, seeing some of these teams bounce out in the first round, second round, like, does it mean anything? Like, I think they should still limit the amount of teams in the playoffs in MLS. Like, the top 7, it's like, cool, like, I'm the Portland Timbers, I just got in, cool, I'm out. Like 1 week, one game on the road. Feels kind of like bland, in a way. And like, in a way, I'm not sure if, I'm not saying, oh, okay, the Quakes, benefited from not being in the playoffs. I'm not saying that. They should have been in the playoffs, and everybody would have taken a playoff game. But the league needs to do a better job of saying, this is the playoffs, this is what the playoffs are about, and if you make the playoffs, it's a big deal. But they make the playoffs seem like it's not that big of a deal. And so, at the end of the day, I may have sounded like I contradicted myself, but like for Portland Timbers and some of these other teams that just get in, it's really not that big of a deal because they didn't go far. LAFC, they're going to go far. Philadelphia Union, they're going to go far. I know NYCFC lost today. But the Atlantas, they're starting to see some teams that are really there every time. And so that gets a little bit in your mind. And so can the Quakes take it to the next level? I think they can with Matias Almeyda. I think they can with the signings. Stay tuned. So that's my little wrap on my season review.
Can I briefly disagree with you? I think that the playoffs are the benchmark for success in Major League Soccer. And I agree with Joel in that the Quakes didn't do that this year. So I think this year is a failure. But I don't think that means it's a year wasted. I think, as you were, referring to, this year they've built a foundation. And that's what all the players are talking about. This is a year to build a foundation in which they can then next year go on and achieve, much greater success. And as you're saying, next year there are no more excuses. This is the quote from Guram Kashia. We didn't qualify for the playoffs, but for next season, it's a must go. There's not going to be any more excuses. So I agree that this year, I agree with Joel in that this year is a failure, but I agree with you in that doesn't mean it's a year wasted.
Parting comments for me is it's pretty simple. Look, Matias Almeyda is a natural winner. He's shown that everywhere he's played. Otherwise is going against who he really is. Let's keep that in mind.
Questions time. Want to shout out Alicio Sandoval. You have the first question of the night. We kind of touched on it, but we can just quickly go down the rung here. What are the top player priorities going into next year? P.S. Thanks for the coverage all season long. Thank you, Alicio, for tuning into our broadcast. I know that you've tuned in to pretty much all of our broadcasts because you always ask good questions, and I always see your name up there. So thank you back. And I think the top player priority, I mostly would agree here, would be Cristian Espinosa. Are there others, that you guys feel besides Cristian Espinosa
Judson.
Right now?
Yeah, I think they need to buy Judson's loan. They had that option, and they need to exercise that option. I think that's a definite.
I think the Quakes are feeling comfortable about that, by the way. I think the chances of Judson coming back are extremely high. I would be extremely shocked if the Brazilian were to stay in his native country or elsewhere. I think he's also a huge priority for the Quakes, just like Espinosa is. I know it's hard to believe, but I know that the Quakes have prioritized Judson's permanent stay. I'm sure they're going to get it done.
Yeah. Judson, Espinosa. I would personally be disappointed if Shea Salinas leaves the San Jose Earthquakes. He's a leader in this locker room. I think at the start of the year, he had a fantastic season. He, had 2 goals against Seattle, and I think he really made an impact. And then towards the end of the year, we didn't see him as much, so now it's more up in the air whether he's going to be returning. But he was the media good guy of the year. He's always a pleasure to work with. So I would be personally disappointed if he left the club. The only out-of-contract player I would say that I don't expect to return, that's maybe more of a surprise, has a bigger featuring role, is Harold Cummings. I believe he's out of contract, and I would be surprised to see him in 2020. I don't expect the San Jose Earthquakes will try to keep him.
I agree on those players. I think it'll be somewhat surprising if we see Andrew Tarbell back next season. I also think the Quakes... Matt Bersano. I think the Quakes also need to decide what they're
Francois Folter.
Yes, I think it's the last time you've seen Francois Folter too. I think they need to decide what they're going to do about Danny Houston. I think there is kind of a forward inflection point that they need to really figure out how they're going to replace Wando's goals.
He's not Wando's replacement.
No, he's not Wando's
not in my books.
He's not Wando's replacement. No. So you've got 15 goals. You got a season now to figure it out. And you can either do that in this offseason or you can do it in the spring window, but you have to figure it out pretty fast. And so if I was the Earthquakes, I would be looking to do something about Danny Houston.
Brian Aboag, you got 3 questions here. I'll take the first one. Whose contracts end this year? I think Alex answered it for you. It was Harold Cummings. Any word on which contracts were picked up, declined? I think the club is working on Florian Youngworth, as you had heard earlier in the show. And then MLS Cup winner prediction. We will take this one. I'm going to throw it over to Jamon Moore. MLS Cup winner prediction.
Can I briefly add to the contract situation?
Yes.
Thanks to Colin Etnayers, our colleague at Quakes Epicenter, his wonderful work trying to keep track of all the MLS or San Jose Earthquakes salaries. There's a couple other players who are out of contract. We believe Jimmy Ockford, Kevin Partita, Paul Marie, Luis Felipe as well, I don't believe are mentioned. So those are the other out of contract players. And I don't imagine the club, I don't imagine I will see many of them returning, but that is the update.
Well, I am excited in terms of the playoffs here and who's going to win MLS Cup. I am excited to see the LA Galaxy and LAFC game.
El Tráfico tomorrow.
I think El Tráfico is entertainment. Not that I'm going to be rooting for either of the teams. I did write the LAFC playoff preview for American Soccer Analysis. They had to twist my arm. No one else was available, and the Quakes didn't make the playoffs, so I lost my Quakes playoff article. It's really difficult to bet against LAFC. Like, it does seem that the Galaxy and Zlatan have their number, but it is very difficult to bet against them.
LAFC have never beaten LA Galaxy, though.
They never have. But they do have home field advantage. They do have Carlos Vela. They do have a better spine. They've got a better defensive core. I think it's a good chance.
I think it goes into extra time, by the way.
I do too. I was going to actually say, I think this will be the first game that goes to penalties, and I think in penalties, LAFC is going to be better. And hopefully we see David Bingham crying at the end as the last ball goes right past him.
Wow. If you guys like that, please comment on
Who's your MLS Cup winner, though?
Yeah, who's your MLS Cup winner?
LAFC. Yeah. Not a difficult bet here.
I concur with Jamon. I think it will be LAFC. If perchance LA Galaxy manage to beat them, then I would guess that my prediction would be Atlanta. So I'm not making waves with my predictions. That's what I would guess.
No, go the safe bets here.
Yeah.
Field advantage.
LAFC.
I want to say LAFC as well, just because they humbled the Quakes twice. Almost actually 3 times in the Open Cup 2 this season. But I would say I wouldn't sleep on that Atlanta team, and I wouldn't sleep on that Philadelphia team certainly either, because they have some interesting pieces there. I don't think Seattle is up to stuff, to get through to the final. I think one of the LA teams will be in the final. Of course, Quakes fans probably don't love hearing that.
That's the reality, though.
Yeah, right.
That's the reality.
That is the reality. The LA teams
invest.
It couldn't be a worse postseason Western Conference for Quakes fans.
And Brian Aboag, thank you for your questions week in, week out here on the show. 7 gone, assuming other leagues are willing to negotiate. Looking at you, Liga MX, and Quakes are willing to spend. What signing could the Quakes make would be a statement of intent for 2020. Almeyda was that statement signing for 2019. I don't know if you want us to sign a player from Liga MX in theory here. I could pick out a Wando replacement that would make waves, and that would be Gignac, but I don't think the Quakes have the money to do that. That would be a statement of intent, certainly, to sign somebody like Gignac.
Alan Pulido.
Yeah, as well. From there, but
He's
I don't know.
He's been woeful at Chivas, by the way, but I think that if he were to sign for an MLS team, they would market him as this huge marquee designated player. Yeah, I don't know. These are all theoretical. I don't really
Yeah.
like to get into theoreticals all that much, to be honest with you. I think that the statement of intent for 2020 is going to be Espinosa if they land him. And as you said, they're going to have to settle for that, which I think most fans are willing to.
I think it's going to be have to be a big contract, and if they can land him, and then particularly if they can make it a 3-year deal and get out of the loan situation, I believe that is actually a very big statement of intent.
Yeah,
It would
yeah,
probably
absolutely.
set a new transfer mark for the team.
How about any league? What about somebody from Europe?
Oh boy.
I don't think they would go to Europe.
I think
Well, I'm
the
just saying.
statement.
I'm just saying because he followed up and he says any league, LOL. So I just want to make sure if you could choose anybody to make a statement of intent, is there an aging striker? Is there a kind
Lionel
of
Messi.
a hot? Yeah, right. I mean, like, well, yeah, of
Aging
course, but
playmaker.
like, not going to happen. But maybe there is an aging striker. Maybe there's someone in their high 20s that could replace Wando. I'm not sure, but.
I don't have
choose
any off
anyone.
the top of my head. I agree that I think that Christian Espinosa is the man that you have to sign in San Jose. And I also agree with Joel in that I think if you're going to dip into the transfer
you're
market, it
agreeing
would
with
be...
Messi?
yes,
The Messi
clearly
one,
Messi.
right.
The Messi one.
Yeah, that
Or another player from South America.
This is going to be the Jamon Moore question of the night, following back up on your question, 7 Gun. Any players you think on the current roster that could make some sort of impact on the USMNT? Don't want to go too down the rabbit hole with this USMNT thing because this could be a whole other show.
Yeah.
However, Jamon Moore's in the studio, so I'm going to let Jamon Moore have first crack
I keep
at this
telling
one.
Charles we need to do a USMNT show. He has not taken me up on that yet.
Guys, I will not be a part of that.
I know you. We are sure.
will
We
not
are
be
He
sure.
a
can, he can host, we can do the
Actually, what would be a really interesting thing is draw a line right here. This side will be Mexico. This side will be the U.S. Kind of interesting. No, from the earthquakes, I really feel that there's not a lot. If someone like a Paul Marie really began to step up and was able to take over that type of role, you could see that. And
Marie's French.
He's French, but he's not committed to the national team,
Right.
right? And so so long as he's got the necessary paperwork for the United States, he could pick his
He can
country.
do it, yeah.
Yeah, most of the players on the Earthquakes, if they met the criteria, could play for the U.S. because
Right.
they're not national team players. At this point, there's not that one person that really does stand out, though. Unfortunately, we didn't see a lot of growth in terms of the youth players this season. To me,
By design.
yeah, and by design, but we talked about in the last show. I mean, unfortunate Gilbert Fuentes wasn't in the U17s, right? Because I think you take a look at the promise of what the Quakes have seen in Gilbert Fuentes and what people like Will Parchman and others who follow the youth national teams have been able to see in terms of his growth. He seemed like a no-brainer to be able to be a national team player. It's going to be unfortunate if he doesn't play in the U17 World Cup like it appears, unless an injury or something else allows him into the squad. So, but his national team career as part of the USMNT, we're talking still 6 years away until that's something that would be a requirement for him to be in a national team. So he's got a lot of growth ahead of him, and I feel that the coaching staff needs to decide what they're going to do about these homegrown players coming into next season, because I'm concerned he missed out on his U17 World Cup opportunity because he's not getting the club time minutes. And so, with that, I think that's the most unfortunate thing. But that doesn't mean, of course, that his future on the national team is in jeopardy.
Good stuff. That was Jamon Moore with the USMNT report. 7 Gone, I appreciate
Make it a
your
regular feature.
7 Gone. We appreciate your questions and appreciate you tuning in to our broadcast. Daniel Negretti is saying, "What's up?" He says, "Nice bow tie. Thanks back, pal." Thank you for producing a bunch of our shows. When
you,
our
Daniel.
producer
Daniel.
Jason, our other producer Jason was out. Javier Leon, this is a really good question. Is Vaco leaving? We need 3 DPs next season if we want to be legit. I agree, and I think everybody on the panel probably agrees with you. with you here.
Vaco's not out of contract, I don't think, so I don't anticipate him leaving. I think this was actually one of his better seasons for San Jose. especially at the start of the year. He was able to put up numbers
mid-season.
to show why he is a DP for this team. And I think if he does that again next year, he'll have a successful year.
Emmanuel TWR, any player in MLS you guys want to see play with the Quakes next season? Anybody want to take this?
Trying to think. There's a lot of players.
Right. Yeah.
There's a lot.
I would like to see the Quakes take a look at what the possibilities are of players out of contract at the center back position. I feel that it's not solidified right now with Kasia, and Cummings is out of contract, so unless they decide that they want to try to re-sign him. But I think going outside of MLS has proven to be very risky. We've seen it's taken time for Affelter never quite acclimated to the team. Kasia arguably has not reached his potential within the team. And the age is starting to catch up to those guys as well. So to me, I would try to look within MLS to find a center back and potentially even a left back
Wallace Abubakar?
to be able to take care of things.
That's who I'm thinking. That's who comes to mind.
Yeah.
That's a center back that I would take. I mean, there are rumors that the team is at the top of my head, tip of my tongue, are willing to pay $1 million for him.
Yeah, there are some pretty big numbers. In fact, Iko Para, when he moved over to Minnesota United, was actually a very big deal, and a lot of people scoffed at that. And again, defender of the year and helped get Minnesota United respectable and into the playoffs.
So I think someone like Abubakar would be my candidate. But again, theoretical. History says that the Quakes will not look for someone within the league, and fishing for players abroad has been a 50-50 call, really. We'll see what happens this season, but with Almeyda at the helm, I'm expecting for them to look overseas again.
Emmanuel TWR, appreciate all your questions this year. You've tuned into most broadcasts. Javier Leon, same thing to you. Appreciate your questions this year. You've also tuned into a majority of our broadcasts here, if not all of them. And you guys have been also loyal and asking your questions and giving your comments and your feedback. As we like to say, any feedback's good feedback and any comment's a good comment. We like hearing this. JD, any chance Jewel makes the jump to a stronger league anytime soon? And some other comments, and thank you for this question. Really good question here.
Absolutely, 100%. I'm all for this, and I actually said this about Nick Lima about 2 years, if I recall. I said by the age of 25, he had to be in Europe. Unfortunately, right as he was hitting his peak, he stumbled, and now, I guess, for lack of better words, you can't say that his future is in some sort of jeopardy. Maybe it's not an extreme jeopardy, but it's not at the stage that it was just a couple of months ago, less than a year ago, training with Hanover, or Hertha Berlin, sorry, and having the U.S. men's national team on his side and getting consistent minutes as a right back, being the undisputed starting right back for the Quakes, scoring belters. Every goal that he scored was just sensational. He had everything going for him, and then he was mismanaged. So I'm worried. I'm worried about Jackson, guys. If I'm being honest with you guys, I'm worried, and I know that he will not be going. I'm sure he won't be going anywhere next season, but he has to go in 2021. He has to make the jump. Even if the Quakes aren't willing to let him go, he needs to look for it himself. And I think, though, that with Almeyda on board, Almeyda was the one who brought it up himself. Yeah. He said that he thought that Jackson Ewell is a European level type of player, and that he hopes to see Ewell in Europe in the not so distant future. So that's going for him. But I think he also needs to look for that himself too. He needs to aspire to be in Europe. A player needs to want it. And that's the thing, is that in America, it's much harder. It's much harder to find a player who's just eager, just eager, innate, just has that eagerness to go out and play abroad and play Champions League and play Europa League. In other countries, in Mexico, for instance, I mean, if a player has a formidable run, they address the media and right away they spout it out. I want to play in Europe. That's what I want to do. In America, they're a bit more calculated. They really watch their words. They at times don't want to get ahead of themselves, but I think Jackson should strive for that. I think he should shoot for that, and I think he should make it clear himself too. He hasn't stated that he wants to go to Europe, but he should.
I agree. I think Jackson, at some point in his career, has to try to play in Europe, and I think that opportunity is
not
going
at
to come.
some point. I think he needs to do it.
I agree. That opportunity is now, and he should take
next
it.
year
right?
if he could.
And I think he's shown that he can do it at the MLS level. This year has shown that he has what it takes to be a solid, consistent, outstanding Major League Soccer starting midfielder. He showed it on the offense, and he improved defensively as well. And so I think now that he knows he can do it at MLS, he has to try the waters in Europe. And he can always come back to MLS if it doesn't work, because he knows now that he has what it takes to play here. So I think it's time for him, in the next year or two, to take the leap to the next level.
But obviously his first step is securing the bag. He needs to get his payday here stateside. And I think that is the next step with Jackson before he makes a move abroad.
The thing that's going to help Jackson be able to make this move is going to be how he does beginning in this offseason, because as we said it before, he's either going to have the opportunity with the Olympic team with the U23s.
Yeah.
And if you take a look at the number of players who may be on the U23s but are also US MNT players, it's a kind of a long list now. I mean, you're talking about people like Paxton Pomykal. You're talking about Timothy Weah.
Jonathan Lewis.
You're talking about, exactly, Jonathan Lewis. Christian Pulisic is actually eligible for the U23. Yeah. So that could be an extremely good team, and that's a real good opportunity to show that you can play with that quality of young player around the world if that happens. And if it doesn't happen, he's going to get to be a part of World Cup qualifying potentially for the U.S. men's national team. So without a doubt, it's going to have to happen in the next 2 years for Jackson.
I agree, and I think he just ran out of gas this last year, playing in that box-to-box role and then playing as a defensive midfielder for the U.S. team. And I just think he ran out of steam, to be honest. And I think that it's nothing against him. I think he's one of many players that ran out of steam, in addition to kind of this squad rotation that Matias wasn't able to factor in correctly as to kind of the collapse and giving some guys some matches off. But I agree. I think he's a phenomenal product, and I think that he would be better served playing in Europe in the next coming years. JD, appreciate your question. Daniel Zohar, thanks for the love. Satish, thanks for the love. Brian Abowag again, and Willows 003, thanks for your love. Everyone that's tuned into this broadcast, we appreciate you tuning in. We're going to go down the line now and give our final thoughts about the show, and we also want to hear your comments and your feedback. We will try to do some supplementary content for you, so some sit-down taped interviews, and if there's some huge news, we may do a live show, so stay tuned to our Twitter handle and our Instagram and our Facebook page, and we certainly appreciate everybody for tuning in. But yeah,
I'll go ahead and start. And first and foremost, I just want to thank every single one of you for tuning in and week out, tuning into our special interviews as well. For showing the love not only on here but on Twitter as well, and even on the streets. I've had several of you approach me personally, and honestly, truly grateful for that. Never thought that it would turn into this. Although a part of me did, because we have a wonderful cast here, and really, truthfully, and I don't think we've given ourselves enough credit. There's just really nothing like this in the MLS sphere. What's more special about this particular show is that we mirror the San Jose community. We are, this is a blue collar show, just like the Quakes are a blue collar team. This is recorded at a humble studio. This is for the fans, by the fans. And I think we're really consistent on that end. And, you just cannot find this anywhere else. For the longest time, the San Jose Earthquakes have desperately, desperately needed something like this. I'm proud to say that I think we do a phenomenal job at filling that void. We hope we can continue next season, and we hope we can have your support as well. Thank you.
Yeah, same for me. I echo everything that Joel said. It's been amazing I joined about a third of the way through the season, this team, and I appreciate you guys just kind of welcoming me in. You can't do a 4-person show here very easily without passing mics back and forth. So as you can see, that's a reason we haven't done it before now, but we wanted to do it for this last episode. And I appreciate, Alex giving me the chair during the middle of a show sometimes to do some analytics talk and things like that. And it's been a lot of fun. I'm going to miss this in the off season for sure.
But we need our break too.
We need our break.
Just like the players do, we need it. We need it as well.
Yes. And if you guys have any ideas in terms of the shows that you'd like to see, I certainly would love to hear from you, your ideas. As you know, I'm available on Twitter. Catch me anytime, ask me any questions you like. I take DMs, and it'll be great to interact with you as the off season progresses and we get ready for a new season.
Yeah, it's been a really fun year. There have been years covering the San Jose Earthquakes when it's sort of become a bummer to watch the team. But that wasn't the case this year. Till the very end, we've had a lot of stuff to talk about. And I'm very grateful for this show and for everybody here for giving us a platform to do so. Specifically for Charles and Joel and Jason for starting the show over the off season. I was very grateful to be able to join the fold shortly into the season, and then to have Jamon as well join the show. It makes me excited about what we can do next season. And finally, thank you so much for all of you guys tuning in at home. We wouldn't be able to do this without your support. I am, every week grateful for your questions. Sometimes you keep us on our toes. We very much appreciate that. And you guys are also what makes me excited about covering this team more in the future.
Yeah, I just want to echo what everyone else had to say on this panel. We are very grateful, we are very humbled, and we don't take it for granted. And what Joel talked about this being kind of the first in its kind show in Major League Soccer, besides the shows that Major League Soccer actually produces for Major League Soccer, we're completely independent, and we come from different backgrounds here, and we each have our own things going on besides this. Yeah. And that's important to us. The fans, you guys have made this. You guys have tuned in every week, and we love you. We love you every single day. And Alex says you keep us on our toes. And we're grateful for every question, every comment, all the feedback, all the DMs. This has been so fun to do, and really a great honor to help host this show with this phenomenal team, and to become friends with you guys too, and our producer Jason, and you, the fans, for watching and viewing and being part of our community, because we're a community and we're building our game how we want it in our current backyard, given very hard circumstances in our country with everything that's going on. And so that is something to be said with all these things kind of parsed together. Just want to give everyone who tunes in a pat on the back, because you are building and you're shaping this game, the game that we all love, and that's why we're up here. We wouldn't be up here if we didn't love it. Week in, week out with this show. So technically, by tuning in, you help build the game, and that really means a great deal to me. I'm a soccer romantic. I'm a football romantic. Someone that could watch a neutral game every single day and just pick out little things and say, you know what, that's fantastic. That needs work done. That player needs to be signed, etc. And so it takes a bunch of football romantics as well to tune into this show. So thank you, everybody. And thank you to Aaron Sholl and Jason Sholl, who put this together and initially reached out to myself and Joel to start this back in January and February, to start discussions about this, because they have the Fin Factor, our sister show that's shot in this same studio. If you're a Sharks fan, Fin Factor is their name. They will be shooting all the way until May of next year, and we're very thankful to the Sholl brothers, both Jason and Aaron, for providing this space and being here. So thank you, everybody, once again, for Aaron Sholl, for Jason Sholl, for Alex Morgan, Jamon Moore, Joel Soria. I'm Charles Wollin. Appreciate you guys for tuning in, and we will see ya soon. We'll say soon. Cheers.